Mysterious killing of a prominent law professor at Florida State University. Police are convinced it's a murder case, but so far there are no good leads.
The line goes dead at 11:13 on a quiet Friday morning. And that silence is the last thing anyone will ever hear from him. Seconds earlier, he had been talking on the phone as he pulled into the driveway of his home. Then his voice changed. He told his friend someone had arrived in his driveway and that he didn't recognize the person. Nothing followed. No goodbye, just silence. A friend remained on the other end of the call, unaware that the conversation had just become the final moments of a man's life. Across the street, a neighbor heard a sharp crack that didn't belong in the stillness of an ordinary residential morning. Looking outside, he caught sight of a silver Toyota Prius speeding away from the driveway. He ran across the road and found the homeowner slumped behind the wheel, barely alive. Within hours, police believed they were investigating a robbery gone wrong. They weren't. What began as a single gunshot on a quiet suburban street would slowly unravel into one of America's longest and most shocking murder-for-hire conspiracies. By the following morning, the victim was dead. His name was Dan Markel. Dan Markel was born on October 9th, 1972, and raised in Toronto in a close Jewish family, the son of Ruth and Phil, with a sister, Shelley. He was energetic and intellectual from an early age, and that drive carried him to Harvard for his undergraduate degree and then law school, with a fellowship at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and a master's degree from Cambridge in between. He graduated Harvard Law magna cum laude in 2001, clerked for a judge on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and practiced white-collar criminal defense in Washington, D.C., before joining Florida State University's College of Law in 2005. At FSU, he built a prolific academic career and co-founded one of the country's most widely read law professor blogs. He met Wendi Adelson on a Jewish dating site. She was a law student with her own Cambridge degree from a wealthy South Florida family whose parents ran a dental practice. They married in Boca Raton in February 2006. Wendi joined FSU's faculty and moved to Tallahassee. Their first son, Benjamin, was born in 2009, their second, Lincoln, in 2010. Wendi had never been happy in Tallahassee. She found it small and far from the family she'd grown up inside. In September 2012, while Dan was traveling for work, she packed the house, the children, and the contents of their safety deposit box and left without a note. He came home to an empty house and divorce papers on the bed. He called it to friends his Pearl Harbor. For weeks, he didn't know where his sons were. He eventually learned Wendi had taken them to her parents' home in Coral Springs, 500 miles south, and that she intended to stay. She filed for divorce that same month. Dan fought back through the courts, and his custodial rights kept the boys, and by extension Wendi, tethered to Tallahassee. For the Adelson family, Dan Markel's presence in his sons' lives was not a grievance to be negotiated. It was a legal wall standing between Wendi and the life they wanted for her, one they reportedly tried to dismantle by offering him money for full custody. He refused. He had, by then, also started a new relationship, and was, by the accounts of people close to him, happier than he'd been in years. There was no way for him to know what that happiness was about to cost him. By July 18th, 2014, the plan that would end his life had already been in motion for months. That Friday morning, Dan dropped his sons at daycare just before 9, then drove to a gym on McKay Boulevard. Surveillance footage would later show a green Toyota Prius arriving in the same window and following him inside. At 10:38 a.m., he left the gym and drove toward Benton Hills. The Prius followed, tracked block by block on street cameras, all the way to Trescott Drive. He pulled into his driveway, still on the phone. "Somebody's coming in behind me," he said. Then a grunt, muffled sounds, labored breathing. He never spoke again. The autopsy would later confirm 2 gunshot wounds at intermediate range, one to the forehead, one to the left cheek. He was rushed to the hospital and never regained consciousness. He was pronounced dead the following morning, 14 hours after the shooting. His sons were still at daycare. Wendi was brought in for questioning almost immediately. In her recorded interview, amid expressions of grief, she raised, unprompted, the idea that someone might have killed Dan on her behalf, then pointed investigators toward her older brother, Charlie.
I made my brother, the one, his name is Charlie, the one I'm really close to, he makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought the TV for me this morning that got broken, and I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that, like, he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper.
Charlie Adelson, a periodontist who worked in the family's dental practice and was close to his mother, Donna, would become the second name in an investigation that was, at that point, still built almost entirely on a fleeing car and a neighbor's description of it. What later emerged, across years of investigation and multiple trials, was a plan set in motion roughly 9 months before the murder. The motive, as prosecutors would frame it, was not money or ideology or long-simmering rage. It was geography. Prosecutors argued that members of the Adelson family wanted Wendi and her sons 500 miles closer to home, and Dan's legal standing as a father in Tallahassee made that impossible. Charlie had been in contact since late 2013 with a woman named Katherine Magbanua, who was involved with a man named Sigfredo Garcia, a South Florida man with gang ties and, prosecutors would argue, the operational knowledge Charlie needed. Garcia brought in a longtime associate, Luis Rivera. Financial records later showed that Donna Adelson, who managed the family dental practice's books, signed 44 separate checks to Magbanua between 2014 and 2016, payments with no job title, no schedule, no documented role behind them. Garcia and Rivera made a reconnaissance trip to Tallahassee in early June 2014, renting a Toyota Prius and staying in motels while they learned Dan's routine, then drove home without acting. 6 weeks later, on July 16th and 17th, they returned, along with Magbanua. The killing happened the next morning. 90 minutes after the shooting, phone records show Garcia's first call went to Magbanua. Through the rest of that day, records show calls cycling between Magbanua, Garcia, and Charlie Adelson. That night, Magbanua drove to Charlie's house to collect payment. He told her, she would later testify, that his parents had just left. The cash she received was damp, she said, because Donna Adelson had washed it. Investigators had almost nothing to work from at first. No known enemies, nothing stolen, no visible motive. What they had was the Prius, caught on camera, and a SunPass toll transponder on the vehicle, uncommon in Tallahassee at the time, and traceable to South Florida. That single lead took nearly 2 years to run down. In 2016, rental records finally connected the car to Garcia and Rivera. By that spring, investigators believed they understood the shape of the conspiracy, but they needed something new, something recorded, to make the case in court. An undercover FBI agent approached Donna Adelson outside her Miami condominium, posing as Rivera's brother, and handed her a printed news article about the murder with a handwritten dollar figure and a phone number, telling her the man needed to be paid for the help he'd given her family. Donna denied knowing anything. Her first call afterward was not to a lawyer, it was to Charlie. The next day, Charlie met Magbanua at a Miami restaurant, Dolce Vita, in a conversation captured by a hidden recording device, one so muffled by restaurant noise that it would take 6 years and improved audio technology before prosecutors could use it. By then, investigators had also learned the family had a private shorthand for the murder. They called it the TV, language they used casually, on phones they believed were secure, evidence of how completely they had come to believe they were beyond reach. Garcia and Rivera were arrested in the spring of 2016. Rivera, already serving time on an unrelated racketeering charge, took a plea deal, second-degree murder, 19 years, in exchange for testimony describing the rental car, the motels, the reconnaissance trip, and the payment structure. Magbanua was arrested that October and charged with first-degree murder. Garcia and Magbanua stood trial together in September 2019. Phone records, SunPass logs, surveillance footage, and Rivera's testimony left Garcia unable to account for his whereabouts that morning. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder and conspiracy. He was sentenced to life without parole. Magbanua's jury deadlocked 10-2, and a mistrial was declared. She was retried in May 2022, this time with Rivera testifying in far greater detail, and was convicted on all counts, sentenced to life without parole, plus 2 consecutive 30-year terms. Charlie Adelson was not indicted until April 2022, nearly 8 years after the murder. His trial began that October. Prosecutors presented phone records linking his calls to Magbanua, Garcia, and his mother on the day of the killing, the enhanced Dolce Vita recording, and Magbanua's testimony that Charlie had stepped away to call his mother whenever the plan came up between them before the murder. On the recording, Charlie could be heard saying that if investigators were going to charge him, they should charge him, since they clearly only knew part of the story. In November 2023, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. Days after that verdict, authorities found Donna Adelson at Miami International Airport, holding a one-way ticket to Vietnam, a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. She was arrested at the gate. At her trial, jurors heard the FBI sting recordings, Magbanua's testimony about the washed cash and the empty house, and accounts from women previously incarcerated alongside Donna and Magbanua, describing private admissions and offers made for silence. On September 4th, 2025, 11 years and 47 days after the shooting, a jury found her guilty on all counts. The case broke not through a single confession, but through the slow accumulation of evidence separated from its architects by layers of intermediaries, a toll tag on a rental car, a prisoner willing to cooperate, 6 years of waiting for audio technology to catch up to a conversation in a loud restaurant, and a grandmother handed a piece of paper outside her own front door. In the years after, Dan's mother, Ruth Markel, helped push through the Markel Act in Florida, a law granting grandparents visitation rights when a parent has been linked, civilly or criminally, to the other parent's death, a direct response to the custody dispute that placed her son in danger in the first place. A friend of Dan's founded Justice for Dan, which later established a scholarship in his name for law students. If this case stayed with you the way it stayed with the investigators who spent 11 years on it, the most useful thing you can do is pass it on. Like it, share it, tell us in the comments what stood out to you, and subscribe for the next one.